Today we're going to play with layer modes and combining different images together, and we're also going to add in the film strips so that you can get these sprocket holes if that's something that you want to add into your images. So let me show you the images that we're working with today. You may use any images that you want for this. I'm also going to give you these images just so you have something to play with if that's something you'd like to do. So my base image on this is just Mr. Modi. I'm also going to add in this film strip for the sprocket holes that I want to show here, and just to give that sort of texture and idea to this, I can also change the color of this before I add it in. And then I'm going to use these candles from a church in Barcelona. So as I layer those in, I'm going to use layer modes to first combine these two images together, which may be a great image in itself. I'm going to start to think about where do I want to place things? Do these leading lines help me go towards my focal point, which is of course my cat's face? Are they distracting? Are they pulling things away? How can I still have a focal point? How can I still have some cool repetition and ideas like that? How can I play with color? And then we're going to add in the film strip on top and blend those layers together. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these two layers out and start from scratch. Okay, so I have this image here, and the first thing I did was I went in and played with color. Again, you can do this in Lightroom first for your images, or you can do this right here. So I'm not going to go to the cookie. If I went to the cookie here, you're going to see it's going to add in another layer. And I don't want to add in another layer because I only have those 3 layers that I want to work with in the end. So instead, I'm going to go over here to Image Adjustments, and I'm going to play with my hue saturation over here. As you can see, it did not make another layer. It's attaching itself to this single layer here. So I can play with, of course, my saturation right away, and I can go to the master and change all of the colors. I could pick a single color, like my yellows, and change just the saturation of that. I can change the hue of the entire thing as well. So go ahead and play with your base image and see what you want to do. I'm not going to change this too much just because I know I'm going to layer some other colors in. So I'm just going to boost my saturation. You decide what you want to do with this first layer. Okay, but we're just practicing adjustments that attach to the layer itself. Now let's go over to our next image, and remember we can do Select All or Control A. We are going to copy this image, and then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to paste this on top. Now your images coming from different places are going to be all different kinds of sizes. So if it is enormous, just remember you can go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Free Transform this time, and you can see it is enormous. So I'm going to zoom out. That's how big this image is. I'm going to hold down my Shift key so that it doesn't get distorted, and I can decide how much of this image I want to use. Maybe I want it zoomed in. Maybe I want the entire image. I'm also going to rotate this just a little bit so it feels straighter, or I could intentionally make it kind of crazy. All right, I'm going to go right about there, hit that check mark. Now I can't see the two images and I want them to blend together. So I'm going to go over here in my layers, and I'm going to go into my layer modes. Now these are all different kinds of modes, and what they're going to do is they're going to take information from each layer and blend them together in all different kinds of ways. So you really just need to start and click and go through and see what you like. So let me zoom in so we can see this clearly. Oops. There we go. There we go. Okay. So as I go through, I have all different options of what's going to happen. And in Photoshop, you can just mouse over these and they change. Here in Lightroom, we kind of need to click on each one. So I could go through all through. Some of them are great, some of them are not great. I already know that I wanted to use overlay for this. I also really liked screen and color dodge. I thought those were really exciting as well. This one's a little bit softer. So I have to decide, do I like the flame right here in Kitty's eyes? Do I not like that? Do I want my color more saturated? You're going to play around with that and decide. So I'm going to leave it over here. Sure, let's use soft light. I like that a lot. Okay, so I'm still on this layer 1, so I can still move this around and decide, do I want a flame right on his eye? Do I want things off to the side? Do I want these candles to line up with the other image? So I can still go back in here to my transform and still change things around. Maybe I want those candles to fall right along the windowsill. Maybe I want to stretch this out even larger so that it covers the whole thing, holding down that Shift key. I really want you to play around with your images and just see what happens. See what you really like on there. So I kind of like this little flames almost feel like parts of his fur. I really like that these candles line up You decide what you like. Okay, now that I have this, again, I could go into this layer and go to my image adjustments, play with colors, play with changing it to black and white. Any of those things work. But instead, I'm going to jump here to this film strip. And again, I'm going to select all, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to jump back over here, and I'm going to paste this in. Now this one is significantly smaller. So again, I need to go in here and go to my Edit Transform. I'm going to do a free transform so I get everything. And I'm going to rotate. If I hold down my Shift key, it locks it into a perfect vertical. I can keep holding that Shift key as I stretch it out so it doesn't get distorted. There's text on here, so I want it to look as close to the real proportions as possible. So I'm going to keep holding down that Shift key, stretch it out, and then check mark. And again, you cannot see through this layer. It is at full opacity. Of course, I could bring this down and just show some of that by changing the opacity, but I want it to blend together. So I'm going to go back in here to my layer modes and go through and see what they do. Now, the more you use the layer modes, the more you can expect certain things and know, like, okay, lighten is always going to make it lighter. Multiply always makes things darker. Screen, again, is my lighter sort of effect and blending mode in there. And you can go through and play with a lot of those until you get what you want. I know I tend to like exclusion and difference because they do some really crazy things sometimes. And so I love that sort of like blue teal effect. That's just me as something that I like. For this one, I'm going to do screen. And the reason I'm going to do screen on here is because I want to show you, again, just an adjustment of a single layer. So I'm on layer 2. I'm going to my image adjustments, so it doesn't affect all my layers, just this one. And I'm going to go into levels. Again, it did not add another layer in here, but it is going to be affecting my layer 2. Now the reason I'm doing levels is because I want this film strip to show up a little bit more on the edges, but I don't want to change what's happening here in the middle. So I'm going to grab the gray, and I'm going to slide this and see what it does for my film strip. I can also grab the black and say I want those blacks to be darker. I want those whites to be brighter, and I can slide this back and forth until I get what I like. So notice my sprocket holes get really bright white if I pull this white in. If I pull the slider down here, that white turns into gray. So remember, these are two different things. This one makes your whites just a little brighter. The gray is my overall exposure, lighter or darker, and the black, take my blacks from a lighter to a pure darker black. And you're going to see even this red intensified. So I can play around with just this to see where do I like the film strip? How do I get this film strip to show up in a bigger, bolder way? When I have what I like, I can click OK. That may change. I may want to have something different, like difference then, and see what that's like and change my mode again, or I could leave that where I had that before. And now I have my finished image. I've layered 3 different things together. I've used my blending modes. I could even go in and turn something into a mask and paint part of it out if that's something that I really wanted to do. If I didn't want this candle here, I could just kind of take some things out and blend them out. I'm not doing a great job with that, so I'm going to undo that for now. But you have lots of options as you start to combine things together. Let's talk about saving in this version now. If I go ahead and say File and Save PSD, a PSD is a Photoshop document. It will keep all of your layers, so when I reopen it, I can still see these layers as separate and go back and edit them again. If I know that I am ready to send this out and I'm ready to just turn this in as a single image, instead, I can go Export and export as JPEG. What that's going to do is it's going to flatten and merge these layers down to one. You will not be able to see these separated layers anymore, but it's an image you can then put in a Google Doc. You can send it anywhere. It's just a JPEG image like everything else. So let's export that as a JPEG, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It's going to go into my downloads. I can then move it, save it, do something else with that. So try this out. I do want you to try this film strip. I'm going to put that inside your folder. I will give you some more images as well, but you're welcome to use any images that you want to play with.